Oh, oh my goodness, is that time already? I've only just done a news segment last night. Oh, goodness. Oh, I haven't even had time to have breakfast. Yeah, like I ate an apple for breakfast. Anyway, hello, welcome to another A Tippling Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a Ukraine war news update for the 27th of February 2023. I did a news segment last night. That's my last video, and I can't believe there's all this stuff to talk about already. It's just insane. Anyway, as ever, let's go first to the Ukrainian recorded losses for the Russians for the day before. All the usual caveats, inaccurate propaganda. Russians don't produce the same sort of figures. All the usual caveats for everything I say in this video. I am reporting other sources. Please check my claims. Please check the claims of the sources I use. This is not like 100% fact. This is most probably happening as according to these sources and as according to my evaluation. Just have to do those caveats due to past issues with YouTube. Uh, this is another example of weekend stats being lower than weekday stats. 560 liquidated personnel, which is fewer people lost than the day before, and far fewer, really, by the hundreds compared to the weekdays before that. 4 tanks, 6 APCs, 1 aircraft, 11 drones, 6 vehicles, and fuel tanks. And talking about aircraft, yesterday there's an aircraft lost around Bakhmut. Supposedly a Su-25, I think, was shot down. The pilot ejected today. It's confirmed that near Avdiivka, a Russian Su-25 was downed by Ukrainian forces with manpads. I don't know if that's actually the same aircraft. We've got one here. This could mean that there's a further one to be added to that. Maybe we'll see that on the stats tomorrow. Or the one in Bakhmut was indeed the one near Avdiivka. Not sure. I will hopefully get some clarity on that going forward. Talking about losses, so this is Reznikov in talking about. So he's the defense minister, saying Russia loses 500 soldiers every day in the battles near Bakhmut. He said in an interview with Republican. In fact, he says it is already underway, the offensive. We call it a creeping offensive because they have a crazy tactic. They send waves of Wagnerians or ex-prisoners against us in order to reclaim a few meters of land, for example, in Bakhmut. 20 of them attack our positions and we kill them. After a while, 20 more come and 20 more in a continuous cycle. Our general on the Eastern Front said that the Russians had 500 killed and 900 wounded in a day, he said. So this seems to imply that 500 Russian soldiers are dying a day in Bakhmut. They are making gains. They are making incremental gains every day. There are some rumors of a counterattack north of Bakhmut yesterday or last night, actually. We'll talk about that in my frontline update. But Bakhmut is this terrible meat grinder for both sides, no doubt. But it appears that the Ukrainians are making these very calculated decisions that the costs are far higher for the Russians than they are for the Ukrainians. If that wasn't the case, they would not be defending Bakhmut still. So I think the fact that they are defending Bakhmut is itself evidence that the Russians are losing this type of this number of troops, or at least whatever Russia are losing, they're losing far more or considerably more than the Ukrainians, in order that the Ukrainians are still there. Interesting. I want to look into this. Haven't heard much else about this, but the Russian air warning plane, a Russian air warning plane, was hit by partisans within Belarus using drones, according to the head of a protest group that first reported the incident. The people responsible for the attack have already left the country, according to Alexander Azarov. And here's a translation of the Telegram post. These were drones. The participants of the operation are Belarusians, participants of the Victory Plan. They are now safe outside the country. The head of the Bipol Association, Alexander Azarov, told Belsat that the Russian A-50 plane was attacked from the air in Machulsk. Goodness me, it's too early in the morning. I haven't had breakfast yet. Have you seen that? The participants of the operation all left Belarus. Azarov said that the operation was being prepared for several months and expressed the opinion that the current authorities in Minsk will not call this attack an excuse for the direct participation of the Belarusian army in the war in Ukraine. Of course, you've got to worry about those kind of ramifications of doing any kind of partisan work inside Belarus, that it might trigger off the Belarusian authorities to say, "Oh, this is now permission for us to get involved in the war directly," and that could itself be hugely counterproductive. Bipol points out that security forces have begun to search social networks for the identification of persons who comment on the events at the airport. Uh, yeah, looks like an autocratic regime right there. Okay, UK intelligence update talks to the fact that, or the claims, but they seem to be pretty factual since the Russians are admitting them, that Mariupol has been hit consistently over the last few days. There have been some pro Kremlin voices on my thread who have said that where's the proof of this? And actually, there's been a number of videos taken of these hitting from a distance at night in Mariupol, and we have Russians admitting this. So since 21st of February 2023, says the intelligence update, pro-Russian officials have reported at least 14 explosions around the Russian-occupied city of Mariupol. Sites of the incidents have included an ammo cache cache at the airport, two fuel depots, and the steelworks that Russia uses as a military base. Mariupol lies at least 50 kilometers away from the front line. Russia will likely be concerned that unexplained explosions are occurring in a zone it had probably previously assessed as beyond the range of routine Ukrainian strike capabilities. Although widely devastated earlier in the war, Mariupol is important to Russia because it is the largest city captured in 2022 that it still controls and sits on a key logistics route. In fact, it is still very important for logistics. We're seeing a lot of troops going through there to other places, or even accumulating there for later reconstitution of other forces elsewhere. So Mariupol is an important place for the Russians, logistically speaking. Last night there were at least 3 waves of Shahed 136 drones that hit Ukraine. Indeed, it appears now that 11 drones were taken out of the 14 that were sent. So actually, 3 drones got through. Previously, we've had 100% like hit ratio for the drones. So 3 of them did get through. It might be that 2 explosions in Zaporizhia city were drones. One in another city as well. But there might have also been S300 sent. Not 100% sure. I know that Nikopol and Minets were heavily hit by shelling as well. So bunch of things happening, but it appears that a number of drones, not a huge amount. And again, if it's not a huge amount, what does that tell you? If they're just sending these things in dribs and drabs, what does this say about the stockpiles of those weapons? Hashtag Russia on fire. No photos yet, but reports that a hangar has exploded in the northeast of Moscow that contains after diesel containers exploded. It's reported that the structure has already partially collapsed. No injuries reported. Again, something I'd like to see some more details on going forward. And Ukraine is eyeing to launch a major counteroffensive in spring, which could include striking airfields and depots of rockets and artillery systems inside Russia, a top intelligence official said in an interview published on the 26th. Now, I find these claims interesting because you'd think they'd want to be keeping these things secret, right? So if an intelligence official is saying this, they are saying it for a reason. If they're saying it in public, they're saying it for a reason. What would that reason be? This isn't just, oh yeah, I'll tell you in a newspaper interview what we're planning on doing in a secret counteroffensive in spring. If that information is getting out, it has a utility. What are they wanting the Russians to do with that information? I don't know. I find it interesting that they allow that stuff to get out publicly. Um, this is going on to military aid now. German defense minister NATO says that NATO countries could transfer 62 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. These numbers seem to be vastly fluctuating. This number of tanks will be enough to form 2 tank battalions, and I think that was always the intention, was to get 2 battalions out of the Leopard 2s. Boris Pistorius said on February the 26th. However, the minister doubted that Germany would approve additional Leopard 2 deliveries, as the country's industry must first replace the tanks in Germany's own stocks. So that is really good news for the Ukrainians. Leopard 2 is obviously a decent tank, one of the best in the world. So getting 2 battalions of them, and yes, there will be a varying upgrade status the Leopard 2s, but they're still Leopard 2s. They're still, whatever version of Leopard 2 you're getting a good tank. Bulgaria will restore the production of Soviet shells for the armed forces of Ukraine, writes the New York Times. 122 mil projectiles will be produced solely for Ukraine. This is actually something that I was under the impression they were already doing anyway. But now I guess the operative word is solely. They are producing. They are basically a proxy Ukrainian uh, m- munitions manufacturer. Reznikov met with Hanno Pevkur, Defense Minister of Defense of Estonia today. It also became known that Estonia will send more aid to Ukraine, which includes rifles, UAVs, so drones, thermal imagers, generators and chargers, as well as other equipment. It seems like all the Baltic states, I mean, they've been phenomenal ever since the beginning of the war. They are really continuing that support for Ukraine at the moment. The last couple of days, it's been Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and then, of course, Poland. These are the biggest supporters of Ukraine, especially when you see what their support is in terms of percentage of their GDP. When you look at America and you say how wonderful the US is in supporting Ukraine with all of this stuff, and don't get me wrong, it is fantastic and it is a shed load of stuff. And without America, without the US's aid, Ukraine would be in a whole heap of trouble. But when you see it as a percentage of GDP, you actually understand that other countries have done more. Compared to how big those countries are and what their capacity is to help. So countries like the Baltic states and Poland are, for obvious reasons, they're right next door, and these guys it's arguably in their own self-interest to do so. So yeah, there's lots of stuff going on here, but nonetheless, it is fantastic for Ukraine. Germany has sent more military aid to Ukraine. I reported yesterday in German. You guys helped me by translating that, as I knew you would. But here is a translation of the extra stuff they're giving over and above what that list yesterday also said. 6 Bieber, it is Bieber by all accounts. So Justin is in the house. 6 Bieber armored bridge layers. These are very useful. You get a lot of talk about things like leopards. It's all about the leopards, isn't it? And these wonderful tanks and how that's going to be great for this counter-offensive. But if they can't get over a river, those leopards are useless, right? If they are attacking somewhere beyond a river. So you desperately need stuff like these bridge layers and training on how to use them. So Germany is providing these and has done, in fact, given a number of these vehicles over the course of the war, a number of recovery vehicles. Super, super useful. You'll find that Ukraine are probably making a lot use of recovering damaged tanks, shipping them back to Czechia, Czech Republic, getting them fixed up, and then getting them sent back to the front line. And that is as useful as being given tanks, new tanks from countries. It's I have an intuitive feeling. Well, not just intuition, like from all these threads that I've done from people like Trent Telenko talking about how the Russians don't appear to have armored recovery vehicles active on the front lines, that the Ukrainians are taking advantage of their ability to do that and will have more tanks at their fingertips than the Russians, or at least a greater ability to fix up tanks than the Russians. 8 Zetros trucks designed to work in extreme off-road conditions, 20,000 first aid kits, and 10 winter camouflage nets. So good stuff there. This is very interesting. We've not had an awful lot of geopolitical interaction between the Middle East and Ukraine, or indeed Russia particularly. We had some pretty counterproductive oil pricing done by sort of OPEC and the Middle East. But here we have Saudi Arabia announcing it will send 400 million US dollars in aid to Ukraine. The Saudi foreign minister is visiting Kiev over the weekend. Well, that's very interesting. The cynic in me is like, what do they get out of this? Or have they just got that much money that they can afford to um, do the right thing, do nice things, or at least be seen to be doing nice things to increase their own soft power in the world. With everyone, what do they gain? So when the UK gives a load of stuff uh, to Ukraine, it's all about power structures in the world, and it's in the UK's best interest, and it's also morally right. But primarily in the UK's best interest to help Ukraine, because otherwise Russia will get increased power in the world, so on and so forth. And we understand the aid that we give to Ukraine in that way. Where does Saudi Arabia fit into how they view the power structure of the world? Do they favor a world where there is a US hegemon, a US kind of like supreme power, and things, the Western world operates with the US, as your prime mover, or would they favor a China Russia axis involving maybe India as well? What's going on with them? So I find that really interesting and heartening that $400 million is going that way. Um, Moving off military aid now, here's something a bit random, but nearly 40% of Britons have made a donation to Ukraine. I find this quite incredible. And in fact, we have seen consistently that UK has um, one of the highest European supports for Ukraine. Uh, I think outside Poland and maybe the Baltic states again, to mention those. But the UK is consistently really supportive of Ukraine. I don't know whether that's our media, whether it's our previous experiences with Russia. I mean, just recently in Salisbury, we had two Russians attempted to be murdered with poisoning. That's those being the Skripals, and in fact, two locals died as a result of that. And then we had Litvinenko in London. So these assassination attempts in the UK in broad daylight maybe add to this opinion that we have of Russia. Um, so on and so forth. I don't know, but we seem to really support Ukraine, and that's actually been shown in the data of actual support from a personal level. 40% of Britons have made a donation to Ukraine, so that seems pretty impressive. Prosecutor General's office. I talked about war crimes the other night. Prosecutor General's office records over 71,500 war crimes. So that's an uptick of 6,500 from sort of weeks back when I was talking about 65,000. That was the latest figure. It's now gone up 6,500. Ukraine's Prosecutor General's office reported on February 26th that Russian forces have committed 71,586 war crimes and crimes of aggression in Ukraine in since the war began. Okay, a little bit of geopolitics, not too much. Let's continue with the general events. There will be no reconciliation, says no reports, with Russia in the next 100 years. Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, in an interview with Focus, has said Russia must first change, be democratized, demilitarized, and denuclearized. This is really quite important. It's saying that, yeah, you might want us to do a peace deal with Russia. You might want this to happen in the rest of the world, but peace it's not going to be easy. They need to get out of our country. Then once the war stops, don't expect us to be reconciled with Russia until they've got a complete regime change, that they've got democratic institutions in place. They've become a demilitarized and denuclearized state, and that's going to take a long time. That's really strong words here from Shmyhal. Um, Very interesting bit of geopolitical alignment here. The Taliban, goodness me. Russia, you know, again, pro Kremlin voices in my threads and everywhere in society. Are you on the right side when your best mates are North Korea, Iran, and the Taliban? Like, seriously? And then you look at the uh, UN votes and see the six other countries that supported Russia. You're like, are you really on the right side here? Look who your mates are. That's a great reflection of who you are. The Taliban and Russia create a trade union worth $1 billion, and Iran and Pakistan will also join it. Russian power engineers have already presented their project in Kabul. Acting Trade Minister Haji Noureddin told Reuters. Afghanistan's Taliban led administration has set up a consortium of companies, including some in Russia, Iran, and Pakistan, to create an investment plan focusing on power, mining, and infrastructure. Great stuff, Russia. I mean, it's good that Afghanistan gets back on its feet. Of course it is. But not with the Taliban at the helm, ideally. Uh, yeah. The CIA is confident that Russian Federation is helping Iran with its missile program in exchange for arms supplies. The alliance of these countries is developing rapidly, writes CNN. So again, this work that's being done between Russia and Iran, as we just saw, the Taliban, possibly Pakistan, although Pakistan has sold some um, ammunition to Ukraine very willingly. They are pretty desperate for money, so I guess they'll be welcoming any investment from anyone they can get investment from. But certainly, Iran and Russia seem to be the tightest of friends at the moment. So, good to have friends like that, I guess. Anyway, thank you. That's the end of my news segment for today. I'm going to go and get on and eat some breakfast, but it's almost certainly not going to be an apple. I mean, apples are great and all that. It's just not breakfast food. What am I talking about? Whatever. Thank you. Take care. Please like, subscribe, and share. And I'll speak to you later.